All right. Well, I'm so excited to have Laura Sullivan with us today. Laura is technically called a hair balancer, or I don't know if that's exact, holistic hair care. And I had my hair balanced by Laura for many, many years when she was coming down to LA. And I've unfortunately don't have her anymore, but she did train at least one person that I get to work with here in LA. But Laura and I have stayed in touch and has so much to say about this hair as cosmic antenna. And we're just going to dive into that today and the connection to the crown chakra. So, Laura, did I miss anything about describing what you do? And do you want to say anything?
Well, it's difficult to describe for most people. It was difficult for me to describe for decades when people would say, well, what do you do? And just, well, there's really hardly anything to point it to. It's, oh, I balance hair with sacred geometry. It's like, well, okay, where do we start with that? And mostly people want to ask, does that involve cutting? Is that like a haircut, or is that, what is balancing? And balancing is cutting the hair. That's the technique that is used, a pair of scissors and a comb, but it is cutting in a very precise fashion that is based on a pattern of sacred geometry to really facilitate the movement of your energy from your meridians up into your head and out your hair, literally out your hair as antenna. And that whole thing is opened up by this sacred geometric pattern that facilitates that flow of energy. So it starts moving through almost like a fountain rather than conventional haircuts. All kinds of issues can actually kind of block our energy when it hits the head. It can be a lot of stress in the scalp muscles and things like that, but it also can be a bad haircut. So that the energy comes moving up beautifully and then it hits and it's like, it's not flowing freely like we want our energy to go.
Wow, I love that explanation. I didn't know that. And that makes so much sense because with reference to having an open crown chakra, would be very helpful then.
Oh, absolutely. That's what the main chakra I'm opening when I'm balancing someone's hair is the crown chakra. It does affect other chakras as well. Certainly the sixth chakra, and a lot of people feel changes in their whole craniosacral, how those craniosacral bones fit together. There's a relaxation that happens. It's actually measurable. We work with craniosacral therapists who can see the difference before and after a hair balancing. It's really profound. And so that affects the jaw as well. I mean, all of this is shifted when the hair is in balance. And so the jaw, and then of course the heart chakra opens as well. So there's a lot that's happening, and you can see the difference with Kirlian photography, the kind of photography that will show an auric field. And there's a pronounced difference with someone who's had their that kind of photograph before their hair has been balanced, and often that shows different kinds of colors, often the reds and yellows, oranges, things like that, that might show a little disturbances or anger and things. And generally it's not as even or as full. And after a balancing, all of a sudden the field expands, the blues and purples show up, and the greens, and then suddenly you see a more balanced and integrated and strong auric field. When the hair is in balance, you can just see it measurably.
That is incredible. And so how you say in the book, I'm going to quote you, this is the book that is being pointed to right here. You say hair picks up information and awareness.
Oh, totally.
How can you just say more about that?
Well, let me start very basically with the fact that we are covered with hair.
Right.
Our entire bodies are covered with hair except our lips and our palms and the soles of our feet do not have hair, but everything else does. And even if you can't see it, I have tiny little hairs. They're not big, but they're there. And many of us, almost everyone, has had the experience when they feel something strange or a verification of something that someone has said, their little hairs will stand on end.
Right.
And that is actually a signaling device that the hair is giving information. Sometimes it's a danger warning signal. The hairs stand up and we're like, ooh, what's the matter? It's not always just, oh, I'm cold. It's really much deeper than that. And a lot of scientists and researchers have looked into that whole influence. And in fact, there are doctors, Dr. Chris Northrup has always talked about the hair being the connector of all humanity, because it's the one thing we all have. It doesn't matter what race, what age, what, we all have hair. That's humans. We have hair, and the hair is a signaling device between these humans and those humans. And the thing is, when you're going to meet someone, before you've even got close enough to make eye contact or say hello or anything like that, your hair has already downloaded all this information about you. And it's also picked up information. And it's all on these very subtle levels. But it's a powerful sense. It's something that is actually measurable, that how hair has the ability to pick up information. And I know it sounds woo-woo, but it really is a sixth sense that we have that's available to us if we would just awaken to it and know that it's available, instead of deadening it off with most of the practices that we do with hair.
Right. And you have this amazing story about the Native Americans.
Well, it's not my story. It's actually just a telling of what happened back in the Vietnam War days, when our armies and Navy, everybody were drafting young men. They were drafting pretty much anybody who wasn't in college to go and serve in the Vietnam War. And they were fighting in jungles there, which was not how our troops were trained. We don't have that many jungle environments here. And they weren't really familiar with that kind of warfare. It was all about like laying low and being sensitive and all this. And we were doing badly, very badly. And people in the Army heard that there were Native American trackers. This is American Indians who were known to have this extrasensory tracking ability out in nature. And they actually drafted some of these young men, and they were citizens and draftable age. They brought them in and said, we hear you do this. And the people were like, yeah. And then they gave them the conventional military haircut. When you get drafted, boom, your hair is cut. Everybody looks the same. That's part of being in the Army. Well, they discovered they didn't have these abilities anymore when the hair was gone. And so it was like, oh no. And they asked them, what's the matter? You guys were so good at this before. And they said, well, but you cut off our hair, So then they didn't quite believe it. So they did some experiments where it would draft pairs and give them tests, like to make sure that they performed equally on all these different tests. And then they would cut the hair of one recruit and not the other, and then retest them. And the one who had the haircut couldn't do the things, perform the same way as they had before, whereas the one who was allowed to keep the hair still had all these extrasensory abilities. And so they changed their rules and said, all right, you guys get to keep your hair long because that's why we need you. And this was reported on many years later. There was actually a psychologist who worked for the VA who came across these reports and these studies and that was the most credible telling of this tale, although I've heard many, many versions. If you Google on the internet, you'll see a few.
So can you just sort of explain sort of how, so they were more aware with the longer hair, with their, I guess, it's like you said, it's not also just about the length of hair you're talking about. Yeah. It's how it's been treated or cut.
Or not cut. That's the other thing. Okay. So that you're sensitized because it's just got these fresh little endings on them that have never been messed with. And so there's a sensitivity where they're just kind of feeling the ethers and coming up with information. And so it's not just about you hearing somebody crackle and, break a twig or something. It's really an ESP, an extrasensory perception that you're getting through the hair, but they get it through the hair on their heads as well, because they just let it grow and they've become used to sensing information from that source. It's a practice thing. It's like you learn this in growing up in that kind of culture. We can't just do it because like, oh, hey, I'm going to start sensing things through my hair. I mean, that would be lovely if we could, and we can improve our ability to be sensitive with our hair, but that extra sensory thing that the Native Americans are so well known for is something that has to be developed and trained, but it is a teachable skill for sure.
Okay. Do you think that we could, you could give some sort of idea of how we could develop that? For example, because we are working with the crown chakra or learning to connect to it. I just wondered if, in addition to getting your hair balanced right, that would be the first.
Well, balancing your hair is basically the way you can maintain your hair in a beautiful, healthy fashion that works for you while you are still honoring that power and energy in the hair. Now, I'm not sure if you realize that actually a fifth of the world's population are Sikhs. And the Sikhs, the Sikh religion, a fifth of the people in the world are Sikhs, and they don't cut their hair at all. It is forbidden. We're talking, they don't shave the armpits, they're not shaving the legs, there's no beard, hair shave, no. Because they consider every single hair a sacred gift from God, every hair. And they are totally into the power and energy of that hair. And so to them, removing even one hair is a defilement of the gift that God has given you. And so they are more attuned to their hair as an aspect of their power in the world. This is, and then it's not like, oh, I just have a layer of fur and protection. It's not that. And then in fact, even their head hair is always wrapped up in a turban of some sort to protect it. And the hair is actually woven into the cloth, because it served to protect them when they were warriors. Of the Hindu religion, they're supposed to be all very pacifist, but the Sikhs were like, oh no, we're not going to just lay down and take it. They became the warriors. And part of that was using their hair and wrapping it into these turbans because it became a protector on their head. And their hair, didn't just sit on top, it was like woven through, so it stayed on there. And then if the people hit them in the head with weapons and stuff like that, this was a protection for them. So they don't cut their hair at all. And unfortunately, in modern days, if you don't really maintain the hair at all, the ends can get just very split and broken and dry. Our water quality in many of our cities is terrible, loaded with chlorine and other chemicals. So I have actually worked with a number of ex-Sikhs, and their hair after 25 years of not cutting, or even just 10 years, it's a gnarly mess. I mean, it's just, so what I'm doing is actually restoring that power to the hair and the ability of hair to function at its peak by the balancing process, because we're really using this sacred geometric pattern to create a matrix of energy around the head with the hair. Because when I'm cutting each hair, it's not like, well, we just comb it in a style and cut it. Every hair is pulled out at a 90-degree angle. And all the cutting is really done out here in the auric field, section by section by section, and from 3 different directions, vertically and horizontally, actually 4, diagonally, right to left, left to right. It's a very thorough process of going through. And each time all the hair is being pulled out at this 90-degree angle, so that you are really creating the shape out here, and every hair flows into the others in a very intentional design and flow. So there's not any choppy edges, like weird things. It's actually designed to enhance your energy flow, not to short circuit.
I love when you talk about hair. It gets me all like, I experience is similar to hearing you talk about it, because it puts me into a bit of an altered state, because you are
for many people. Yeah.
Right. And I know how thorough it is, because when I would go to you, it would be, it would be a substantial length of time, and it would be very relaxing, and the thoroughness, and the hair would be just perfect. And I read in your book that you say that you liken this, all these different angles that you're working with the hair, like how crystals are cut.
Oh, very much like beveling, and because actually the tip of the hair is cut like a crystal, because I'm coming at it from all these different angles. So the tips of the hair are really like a crystalline edge
Mhm.
instead of like a normal haircut with scissors, just like right across flat. But this is, I'm coming at it this way, this way, this way. And so that enhances the ability of the each hair to function as an antenna because it has
Mhm.
this crystalline tip on it. Yeah.
Amazing.
And,
Love
and
that.
I'd say what I'm doing is almost the opposite of acupuncture in a way, because acupuncture would put a needle in. I'm actually stimulating these points by pulling out. You see, I'm pulling out, but it's releasing tension and stress. What made me think of it is when you were saying, "Oh, I would feel so relaxed when you were doing this." And a lot of people, when they get their hair cut, they're like a little nervous and uptight because they've been violated. I mean, who hasn't been violated by a bad haircut at some point? And sometimes we feel we've got to be on guard. And
Yeah.
this is the opposite of that because, first of all, there's an agreement, an arrangement. Before I even start, before I even pick up the scissors, we know exactly what's going to be happening. And then you can just surrender to the process. And it is relaxing because it releases stress. Each little tug has just the right amount of tension on it to pull the stress out of your scalp. And really, because your hair is literally a stress release organ. Your hair is releasing, I mean, your body's releasing stress through your hair all the time, all the time. And normally it just does it on a regular daily basis, except when we're overstressed, when we're like really freaked out and it can't process it fast enough. That's when our hair can get really damaged, like fried, split. Uh, after, I saw many clients after 9/11, and that was such a high stress time in this country. And there were people whose hair was like perfect just before that, and then a few months later, the ends were destroyed because they were just on edge so much. And stress destroys B vitamins and trace minerals, which are two major building blocks for hair. So stress just burns through them like wildfire, leaving very little to support the hair. And the hair just ends up, the ends get fried, and sometimes the follicles aren't being fed. So we have a lot of hair loss due to stress. In fact, right now, because of COVID and both things, people getting sick and having the physiological stress, so the hair starts falling out a couple of months later, or just the emotional stress. Stress can be physical, mental, emotional, and just being emotionally scared and worried all the time, we can precipitate hair loss because that kind of stress again destroys or burns through the nutrients we really need for good, healthy hair growth.
And you also shared with me back then that the scalp itself can be more flexible and more malleable, that it gets tight.
Totally.
And you were
It
showing
should
me,
be.
you were like doing things to your scalp that I could not do it mine. And I was like, oh my God, you've got a really nice loose scalp there. Can you
Well, we all want to achieve a loose scalp. Unfortunately, a lot of our stresses are mental.
yeah.
And that means that our scalp muscles hold that tension and stress. And when the muscles here are tight, then the follicles that are actually the bulbs that are holding the nutrients for our new hairs to grow from, those follicles are embedded in the muscles. They are right next to them. And if the muscles are tight like this, then the follicles are squeezed like this and they can't hold nutrients. But when you relax your muscles and they are very mellow in your scalp, then the follicles can kind of plump out like this and they have all this room and they can hold all kinds of nutrients. The capillaries come by and drop off all this good stuff and they're full of it. And then they grow healthy hairs that come out because they're full of this. But again, you get tight and tense and then it's like, ugh, and you can't really hold the nutrients. So then hair falls out. So one of the things, and it's really not difficult and it's totally free, is massaging our own scalp. And
Okay.
if you can do it when you go to bed, let me just show you the looseness it should have. Like it's like you want to be able, if you place your fingers in one point, you want to be able to move back and forth like this, side to side like this. Like I'm not moving my fingers at all. They're in one place, but the scalp itself should have that kind of flexibility.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And yeah,
not
no, that's good. That's good. Yes, that's very good. And so if you only have acute tension, you can soften that up in just some movement, some rotations up and down, back and forth. You can get it moving. If you've got chronic stress, it takes a lot more work to loosen up those muscles. But I need to tell you the most amazing thing that I saw just a month ago. I have a client, she is in her late 70s, and she's really concerned about hair loss. Her hair is all white, beautiful white head of hair, but she was thinning along here quite a bit. I mean, noticeably when I saw her last time, I had to admit, yeah, it's happening. And I told her, I said, at night when you lay down on your pillow, just take your fingertips and just massage this area like this. Just nice little rotations. Let this be really relaxed. And of course, it helps you sleep tremendously too by relaxing.
I need to do it for that reason, amongst all the other reasons.
Well, the thing is, she came back to me 2 months later, and not only did she have a ton of new hair growing there, I mean, a lot of new hair, but the new hairs, half of them were coming in black. And I was like, what? You've had white hair for years. What is this? But that putting her attention on there and giving it energy.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know what you put your attention on, increases, and but this was, and also if you think while you're doing it, it's like, I love all these new hairs that are being created. I love all these thick, new, strong hairs. And like, if you accompany the action with the thoughts that you're trying to realize, your brain does not really know the difference between what you're imagining and what's real. So you're saying this and giving gratitude for all this thick new hair and everything. And it's like, oh, I guess we have thick new hair. It starts making it for you because it subscribes to that reality that you're putting out. It's kind of like a lot of philosophies out there that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love when you say in the book, your hair wants you to be happy.
Totally. Totally. Your hair has a consciousness. People think it's just dead cells hanging off your head. I mean, that's what hairdressers have been taught.
Right.
Because so many of the practices that hairdressers do are harmful. And if they believed that hair was alive and had a consciousness, they couldn't feel good about doing those. So it's much easier for them in the industry to teach, oh, hair's just dead cells. Don't buy it. Yeah. And that serves them. And yet the irony is they're always trying to sell you products by saying, this will make your hair healthier.
Right.
Well, how do you make something dead healthier? How does that happen? If it's dead, isn't it dead? You don't get healthier deadness. I mean, it's but that's the industry for you. That.
Okay, so before we go into hearing more about, the training that you offer, I want to just ask, so just by connecting to your hair more consciously, the way you've been talking about, do you think that alone is actually opening your crown chakra? I mean,
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Because again, we're not aware of all the possibilities that exist in our head, crown chakra, hair, everything, how this is all connected, because we have been turned off to it. We've been told from the get-go, it's just dead cells, doesn't matter what you do to it. Well, it matters tremendously. It's like a garden. It is like a garden, and the quality of water that you wash your hair with and that you drink, it makes a huge difference in your hair and the quality of your hair. The care you take of your scalp, the how you wash it or rinse it, or like things like conditioner. Even people put conditioner on their scalp. It's insane. The scalp does not need conditioning. It has sebum, the most valuable, precious conditioner you could ever have that your body gives you as a gift. What you want to do is take a natural bristle brush and brush that all along the shafts and strengthen your hair and make it happy. But well, you don't want to go glug, glug, glug. I mean, I knew people, brilliant people. I mean, heads of yoga schools and stuff who you'd think would, know about this, but their conditioner would go like right on there, and then their scalp got destroyed with all like yucky flaking, and it was weird because conditioner doesn't belong here. Conditioner's at the ends. You get conditioners from your ears down, not and then shampoo. You don't shampoo this part of your hair unless you stick tons of product on it. It's your scalp you're shampooing. That's why I like those little shampoo bars now. They have no preservatives at all because it's just a bar. You only need preservatives when there's water in the product. So these little bars, and you just lather it up and you go right on your scalp, right on your scalp. And so you get right in there and the scalp is getting cleansed. And as you rinse it out, then the rest of the hair gets clean. You don't need to get big lathering happening out here. it just dries it out unnecessarily. So then you need more conditioner.
Right.
That's
They want.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, I mean, this book is filled with amazing amounts of information. But I would love for people to know, and this blew me away when you told me, is that you got into hair balancing without knowing anything about how to cut hair, and you teach people who've never cut hair. And
True.
so, and this is your training that you offer.
Well, then I also have taught a number of really advanced hairdressers who've taken every training that they could in the world. They've studied Vidal Sassoon. They were teacher trainers for Trevor Sorby and all these different, highfalutin brand names in New York and in Europe. And these people, after they've done these kind of trainings, they found me, it's kind of a little esoteric thing. It's like, and it speaks to them, but these are people who have been the top of their game out there for 20, 25 years, a number of them. And then they take this and they're like, oh my goodness, everybody should cut hair this way. This is like unlike anything I've ever done before. And it transforms how they work, even though they had patterns built into them for years of, that's how you do this cut and that cut, because it's not about putting a cut on somebody's head, like, oh, here's this style, this will look good on you. It's very organic. It comes from the curvilinear structure of that client's head. It comes from the quality of their hair and what that can do. And it comes from the communication of how does that person want to project their image to the world, because the hair does that. The hair, as I said, downloads all this information about you, and so much more important than our clothes. We can change our clothes, but the hair's with us 24/7. And you want it to look good when you wake up. You want it to look good when you're out. You want it to look good if you get out of the pool or whatever. And so the hair balancing strives to make hair just very organically part of you, for no matter what you're doing, it's going to always look and feel great. You don't need a blow dryer. You don't need to be setting it. I'm the queen of wash and wear. That's the,
Yeah.
and I try to free up everybody. And if they want to use those tools for curling and drying and stuff, those are styling options. But I don't create anything that requires that. And I don't teach that anybody should create styles like that. It's about liberating people. I've had people, particularly with this COVID situation, come back to me over a year, like 15 months later, and they're like, I haven't had my hair cut in this whole time, but it just grew out so beautifully. And it's just like, it's longer than I like it now. So let's do something. But, they've been amazed how it evolves into something else and something else. It's not like conventional haircuts that are designed to look bad in 6 to 8 weeks. So you have to go back and fix it.
Right. I know my hair lasts forever with this hair balancing, and it's gotten thicker thanks to you.
Exactly. It's a different approach. It's almost the opposite of cosmetology, the whole approach.
Right. And so your training is, do you want to say more about it?
Yes, actually, the trainings have been on hold. Well, COVID, I can't have clients. I had to cancel the ones last summer because I can't have people fly across the country and stay here, there on the way. And, and plus I have all these live models. So I have a waiting list around here of people who love to be models for my trainings, but I just can't be having people in and out. It's just too much right now. So I am, but I do have the holistic hair care workshop that can be done as a online type of thing, or even on a Zoom with me, this kind of thing like this. So instead of showing up for it, we can do that this way. But the seminar where you learn the technique of how to do it, that's another 6-7 days that is done in an additional segment. And that has to be in person, because it's all doing it. It's all about doing, seeing me doing it yourself, so it's very experiential. And the follow-up is, again, many months later when you come for the advanced, because you in that intensive, you can only learn so much and take in so much at a time. So then you come back later to learn more advanced techniques and more complicated styles, things like that. But it's interesting because I can have, and I've had in the same class, hairdressers who are experienced and have worked for decades, and a student who's never cut hair before. And both of them can learn this equally as well. I mean, because you're starting fresh with a whole different approach. So it's not about your experience.
That is really incredible. I wish I wanted to do it because from you.
Well, it's really a healing art. It's a holistic healing art. It's not cosmetology, yet it does give you fabulous it's hair that transforms and becomes like the most amazing hair you could have naturally. But it's not coming from the same place as cosmetology is. It's in fact coming at it different, the opposite approach, because it's all based on nature. It's all based on how what's the best way naturally to take care of your hair, and seasonally. So we look at the rhythms, we look at the day to night rhythms, and the monthly rhythms, and the cycles of the moon and how those affect your hair, and then the cycles of the seasons and how those affect your hair, because every season your hair is different based on what's going on with the weather and the climate where you live, and there's different ways to teach it, to take care of your hair, I mean, based on these changes. So it's all based on nature, whereas cosmetology is pretty much all based on chemicals and science, and that's the approach. So it's like, I mean, they're polar opposites, but both want to achieve you being happy with your hair. That's,
Yes, two different roads to Rome.
yes.
Well, I love how you've talked about all of this here. And is there anything else that we might not have covered that you'd like to?
Well, I'd just like to say, and no matter who is listening to this, even if you're not a person who is drawn to this work, if you know somebody who is into holistic healing, who you think might have some interest in working with hair, mention it to them. Have them go look at the website, Hair Harmonics. It's hairharmonics.com. Or if you know a hairdresser who you think is a little metaphysically oriented or into natural healing, things like that. I mean, not if it's somebody who just totally loves coloring your hair 18 different colors and stuff. There's a place for that, but this is not that. This is as much more of a holistic, natural approach. And if you feel there's somebody who might be interested, just turn them on to it. Just say, hey, check out Hair Harmonics, see what you think, or read the book, Awakening Hair, because then you'll have a different understanding. You're like, oh, yeah, I want to approach hair that way. Or if, or you'll know that, no, that's not my thing. I'm really into the chemicals, please give me, and a lot of people love that. That's their art form, is working with chemicals. So I don't put that down. It's just many different paths. And my path happens to be as aligned with nature as I could possibly make it. And for others who want to approach it that way, I am here, and I'd be very happy to share everything I know with you. I mean, literally everything I know, I'd love to pass it on. So.
Yes. And that's another thing you were saying, is that not many people know about this. I mean, this is a very niche. I mean, and so many people would want to have their hair treated this way, who are taking care of the rest of their bodies in a conscious way. So it would stand to reason that they just don't know that this is out here as a possibility, because there aren't many people like you who are able to do this.
It's true. It's true. And I would say a number of my clients happen to be practitioners of other healing arts. They're naturopaths, they're acupuncturists, they're massage therapists. They're people who are already in tune with their bodies and energy and nature. And so they are drawn to this, and then they'll refer their clients. But it's still, as you say, very niche. Not too many people have heard about it, because where do you advertise something like this? Certainly not in hairdressing magazines or, so it's, that's why I love people like you who are willing to share the good news and let people know that there's something wonderful like this that exists.
Absolutely. It's my total pleasure. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you, Michelle. Love you.
Love you too.